The weight of expectations. Examining the pressure on men in sexual performance. In contemporary society, discussions around sex often focus on issues like consent, communication, and mutual satisfaction, yet one aspect that is frequently overlooked is the immense pressure men face regarding sexual performance. While many are quick to make light of the topic, frequently turning it into fodder for jokes, the reality is that societal expectations placed on men in the realm of sex are disproportionately heavy. These expectations can range from concerns about physical attributes, such as size, to the demands of performance, stamina, and virility. This pressure is not only unrealistic but also damaging. It can lead to feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and self-doubt, which can, ironically, impact a man's ability to engage in healthy and satisfying sexual relationships. The problem is compounded by cultural narratives that emphasize masculine prowess and stigmatize anything less than an idealized standard of male sexuality. To understand this better, we need to look at how these expectations have evolved, the impact they have on men today, and why it is crucial to dismantle harmful stereotypes. The notion that men must be dominant, powerful, and sexually tireless has deep historical roots. In many ancient societies, masculinity was closely tied to sexual performance and the ability to reproduce. In ancient Greece, for instance, a man's sexual prowess was often linked to his societal status and personal honor. Failure to perform sexually, particularly in a way that conformed to these ideals, was considered a reflection of weakness or failure, rather than simply a natural part of the human experience. In more recent history, Victorian ideals further complicated the sexual expectations placed on men. While the Victorian era is often remembered for its prudishness, beneath the surface there was a strong undercurrent that men were to be sexually dominant, albeit privately, while maintaining a public image of control and decorum. This duality created an implicit expectation that men had to perform not just for pleasure, but as a way of asserting their dominance and fulfilling the duty in relationships. Fast forward to the modern era, and while many gender norms have evolved, the pressure on men regarding sexual performance remains. Today, men are bombarded with messages from media, pornography, and pop culture that reinforce the idea that sexual success is equated with personal worth. A man is not only expected to satisfy his partner, but also to maintain an idealized version of masculinity that is physically, emotionally, and sexually invulnerable. One of the most pervasive aspects of male sexual pressure is the emphasis on size. From adolescence, boys are often led to believe that their sexual worth is tied to the size of their genitalia. This belief is perpetuated by media and societal jokes, even though research consistently shows that the actual physical dimensions of the male anatomy are not the primary determinant of sexual satisfaction for the majority of women. A study published in the BMC Women's Health Journal revealed that while sexual satisfaction is influenced by emotional connection and communication, the perceived obsession with size is often a male-driven anxiety rather than a legitimate concern of most partners. In addition to size, men are also burdened with the expectation of long-lasting stamina and performance. The idea that men must last a certain amount of time during intercourse or provide intense sexual experiences places undue pressure on men, leading to performance anxiety. According to a study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine, approximately 20% to 30% of men report experiencing performance anxiety, which can result in erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, or a complete loss of sexual interest over time. Adding to the weight of performance is the question of virility, which often becomes a measure of a man's manliness. A man's ability to father children has long been seen as a marker of his masculinity. Historically, the inability to do so was often blamed solely on the man, even though fertility is a complex issue that affects both men and women. The shame associated with virility continues to this day, with men often reluctant to seek help for fertility issues out of fear that it will reflect poorly on their masculinity. The heavy expectations placed on men regarding sexual performance come with serious psychological consequences. For many men, the fear of failing to live up to these expectations leads to a cycle of anxiety and avoidance. Performance anxiety, in particular, is a significant issue that can contribute to feelings of inadequacy, depression, and low self-esteem. Studies have shown that men who struggle with performance anxiety are more likely to experience dissatisfaction in their relationships and avoid intimacy altogether. Anecdotally, many men express feelings of being objectified by the expectation that they must always be ready, willing, and able to perform sexually. The pressure to conform to an unrealistic sexual ideal can cause men to feel disconnected from their own desires and needs. Instead of seeing sex as an act of mutual pleasure and connection, it becomes a test of masculinity, one that many men fear they will fail. In his book The New Male Sexuality, Dr. Bernie Zilbergeld writes, "Men have been taught that their worth, both as individuals and as sexual partners, is tied to their ability to perform on demand. This pressure creates a form of emotional distancing, where sex becomes a goal to achieve rather than an experience to share. This disconnection not only harms men, but also limits the potential for fulfilling and healthy sexual relationships." Addressing the issue of sexual pressure on men requires a broader cultural shift in how masculinity and sexuality are understood. For too long, men have been expected to adhere to an unrealistic standard of performance and dominance in the bedroom, while little attention has been paid to their emotional well-being or the value of mutual pleasure and consent in sexual relationships. To alleviate the burden of sexual expectations, society must foster a healthier, more inclusive view of masculinity, one that allows men to embrace vulnerability, express their needs, and reject the idea that their worth is tied to sexual performance. Acknowledging that sex is a shared experience, not a performance, can help men to develop healthier attitudes toward their own bodies and relationships. Educational efforts, both formal and informal, should focus on breaking down stereotypes about male sexuality and encouraging open conversations about the diverse experiences men have. For example, sex education programs could shift the focus from outdated ideas of conquering to emphasizing communication, consent, and emotional intimacy as equally important components of a fulfilling sexual relationship. The pressure men face regarding sexual performance is a serious issue, one that is often trivialized but carries deep emotional and psychological consequences. Unrealistic expectations about size, stamina, and virility place an unfair burden on men, leading to anxiety, dissatisfaction, and disconnection from their own desires. As society continues to evolve in its understanding of gender roles and expectations, it is crucial to dismantle the harmful narratives surrounding male sexuality. Men should be encouraged to embrace vulnerability, communicate openly, and recognize that their worth is not defined by their ability to perform sexually. By fostering healthier attitudes toward masculinity and sex, we can create a culture where both men and women are free to engage in fulfilling, respectful, and meaningful relationships.